Welcome in to the Strike Zone. I am Joe Hunk, broadcasting as I do every single Thursday night here from First Horizon Park, as we have got the Nashville Sounds game going on as we speak directly behind me right now. Now, every single week, you can always watch the Strike Zone on 104.5 The Zone TV, whether it is YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or Twitch. Doesn't matter, whichever one you choose to get into. Now, the great thing is no matter which platform you are on as well, you can also hop in and you can get into that chat. I've got it pulled up directly in front of me right now as we're going to get going. We're starting a little bit later tonight for a couple of reasons. The first reason has to do with what's going on the field. Now, nothing's happened, nothing negative, nothing, anything that you should be worried about, but there was an audible called right at the beginning of the game that I was unaware of, because I had talked about with a bunch of buddies of mine, because they're all here at the game, about the fact that the Redbirds, the Memphis Redbirds, were going to be starting one pitcher, and then another pitcher is the one that's actually getting the start. And then normally that wouldn't be a big deal, but the pitcher that was supposed to be starting for the Memphis Redbirds was Jack Flaherty, because he was supposed to be doing another rehab start here in Nashville before getting called up to the Cardinals next week so that he can pitch for them coming up on Wednesday night. So that was originally the plan. Well, then the PA announcer was going over the starting lineup as the game was about to start, and it said pitching for the Memphis Redbirds. And I'm hearing in my head, Jack Flaherty, Jack Flaherty, Jack Flaherty. But then it wasn't, and I'm like, whoa, hold up. I've got to figure out what's going on. Jack Flaherty, instead of starting here tonight for the Memphis Redbirds, he's actually in Springfield, Missouri, starting for their single-A affiliate instead of being here. Now, all the way up until first pitch, probably an hour or so before that, everybody was under the assumption that it was going to be Jack Flaherty, because even MLB Pipeline, which is hands down one of the best pipelines when it comes to everything that's happening in Major League Baseball and the Major League Baseball farm systems, they even put out a tweet. Jack Flaherty with his final rehab start tonight for the Memphis Redbirds in Nashville against the Nashville Sounds. So that's what was supposed to happen. Then the audible got called. Jack Flaherty decided he wanted to go to Missouri, and he wanted to be in Springfield rather than being in Nashville. It actually has more to do with the fact that Springfield is closer to St. Louis, and that's the exact reason why he is there. Hop into the chat, get those comments going, because coming up here in just a few minutes, we have got an amazing guest that is going to be joining us here on the Strike Zone as we are broadcasting from the left field pavilion. So we're going to wait on that, because we are having to wait for his event to wrap up. You don't know what I'm talking about, you will hear in just a little bit. But like always, let's get you caught up with what's happening with the Sounds, what's happening at the ballpark. You're probably wondering, why is Joe broadcasting on a Wednesday night? Because Joe is not stupid. If my son's watching, I know I should not use that word. But Joe is not dumb, because he knows what's happening tomorrow night, and we all do. And so instead of having the Strike Zone and like begging for you to listen or watch during the Tennessee Ball State game, we said, look, let's go ahead and do this thing on Wednesday night instead of Thursday night, so that everybody can enjoy the Tennessee game and you can listen to it on 104.5 The Zone. But going into tonight, it's Winning Wednesday here, but what's also cool is if you missed your opportunity to pick up that Rick Sweet jersey and you missed that, they're doing that again tonight. So you can come on down to the ballpark, because there's still a few available. Get yourself a ticket, and you can come in and get that Rick Sweet jersey that they're doing to the first 1,000 fans. Now, the cool thing that's happening this weekend, and we hit on it just a little bit last week, is Paradise at the Park, which is directly behind me. You can't see it, but the bandbox is packed again. I know it's a shocker, but the bandbox is parked, and I'm having to watch this baseball that's flying right now because it just went to left center field. But coming up on Friday and Saturday night, they are going to change that to the famous bar that we all remember down on Broadway, and it's now going to be called Paradise in the Park. There's some sets, some specials and things like that the Sounds are going to be doing. During that, it's going to be Friday night and Saturday night, so make sure that you're hopping in on that and you can be enjoying that. You can follow me on Twitter at Joe Hunk. You can follow us, obviously, 104.5 The Zone is where you can hop in on that as well. But what's great is who we're about to be joined by. Because I was kind of stalling, and the main reason that I was kind of stalling is because the Nolensville Little League baseball team was actually having their welcome home celebration right now. It just wrapped up a few minutes ago over in Nolensville, obviously. And their head coach, Randy Huth, is going to be joining us here in just a few seconds to talk about the team. Now, if you missed it over the past week, first off, it is amazing to see how far this team actually went in the Little League World Series. And we're going to talk to Coach Huth about that in just a little bit. They ended up finishing fourth in the Little League World Series. That's not fourth in America because there's two separate tournaments that happens. There's the international tournament and there's the United States tournament. Nolensville made it all the way to the championship game of the United States, lost to Hawaii. Hawaii was the only team to beat Nolensville in Williamsport. In fact, Hawaii beat them twice. Then they went on to the runners-up game or runner-up game, ended up losing that, and Nolensville ends up fourth in the world in the Little League World Series. And we're joined by Randy Huth right now here on 104.5 The Zone and the Strike Zone. And, Coach, I just have to ask because this is your, fourth time being in Williamsport. How exactly has this changed over time for you?
Well, so I've only been twice. The first two, the head coach was Chris Mercado, who is my best friend. So that was in 2013 and 2014. He took the team. And then the last two times, the last year and this year, I was the head coach. So I've only actually been twice. Okay, well, that's my bad. Sorry about that. Twice, which is still absolutely amazing that you've been to the College World or the Little League World Series twice. But the big question is last year was your first season. This year it's a little bit different. For people that don't know, COVID was still going on last year during the Little League World Series, so there were a ton of different restrictions for you guys. Was this year just a little bit more relaxing than what last year was? It was just very different. Last year you had to test every other day. And if you tested one positive, your team was out. So it's super stressful because you didn't get to focus on baseball as much as you wanted to because you're constantly worried about COVID protocols, which was okay. The experience was still amazing and it was still so much fun, and those boys deserved every bit of it. However, this year, a bunch of things were different. You had international teams, which you didn't have last year. The field of teams expanded to 20 from 16. You also had fans. Last year, we only had 500 fans per game. So this year, just to give you an idea, our very first game was the first game of the entire U.S. side of the bracket, and there were 20,000 people there to see us. So a little different than last year, 500 people versus 20,000. So it was very, very different this year. Both years were fun. Both were magical experience. But this year, I got to say, it was better.
Well, and now I'm curious because, truth be told, full transparency here, for me growing up in the 90s and 2000s in Alabama, I didn't have the Little League World Series. I didn't have Little League Baseball. We played Dixie and we played all those different ones. So for me, going into this, had no idea about Little League. And in fact, whenever we would be playing in our tournaments that would be going on at the exact same time as that's happening, normally whenever those was happening, our tournament would be going on as the exact same time as the Little League World Series. So what would happen is we would be sitting there and we would actually be watching going, man, we can beat these guys. We could beat these guys. But even now, as a 38-year-old, I don't understand the process that comes in what you have to do to make it to the Little League World Series. So what exactly is that process to make it to Williamsport?
Well, it's a very long, grinding process. It's the hardest thing to make in all of youth sports. So there are 6,500 leagues in the United States. And to make it to Williamsport, you have to be in the top 10 of those. So it is extremely difficult to make. But how it works is every little league has their own boundaries. So that's basically if you took a map and you drew some kind of circle around an area, you have to have players from within those boundaries. You can't go get the best players from all over. You play a regular season. We had 7 teams in our regular season, about 75 kids. Then after that regular season, you pick your top 13 kids, which are called the All-Stars, to go on to play in the postseason. From there, you take those 13 and go to a district tournament, which in our district is very unique because Goodlettsville is also in our district, which is one of the top teams in the country. So we have 2 of the top programs in the country playing each other in the very first game of All-Stars, which doesn't usually happen. Then if you win that district tournament, you move on to a state tournament where you play the top district. Each team that won their district, there are 9 districts in the state of Tennessee. If you win that, you move on to the Southeast Regional Tournament, which is in Warner Robins, Georgia. And that is the top team from each of the 8 states in the Southeast. And then if you win that tournament, then you move on to Warner Robins, which is the top 10 teams in the United States. And then the top 10 teams from the rest of the world, the international teams.
Okay, so I seriously thought that all this was just a tryout and just a few players and you figured out who your team was and you went. So I had no idea that there was so much more to this. So when exactly does the season start?
It starts in March. So this is like a 6-7 month process of playing games. It is a grueling way to get from regular season all the way to Williamsport. It is such a grind. It is such a commitment. It's very, very difficult. Very few kids get the opportunity to do it ever. And like I said, 6,500 leagues just in the United States, and you got to be in the top 10.
Wow, that is absolutely crazy. I mean, it really seriously is. But look, this is a process. Like, it's not just a process for you, but it's also a process for the families and everything like this. And we just talked about before you came on, this is your 2nd time. You mentioned earlier that one of your assistant coaches, it's his 4th time. But, like, where did this start for you? Where did it begin for you to say, look, I want to be a baseball coach and I want to teach kids, 11, 12-year-olds, and try to get to the Little League World Series?
So my father was a Little League coach for 40-plus years until he passed away in 2018. So I was kind of born into it. So I've been a Little League coach. It's my 21st year to be a Little League coach. I used to coach in Clarksville, Tennessee at St. Bethlehem Little League. And then in 2015, when my dad could no longer coach anymore, I lived in Franklin, and I used to drive all the way to Clarksville to coach with my dad. But
wow.
When he couldn't coach anymore after the 2015 year, I decided to coach somewhere closer. And Chris Mercado, who has been a longtime coach at South Nashville Little League, which is now Nolensville Little League, had been asking me to come down there and coach for years because he knew that's what I love Little League. And that's how I ended up down in Nolensville. And then in 2018, we won the state. I was the head coach of that team. We won the state, went to the region, and lost in the region to a team from Georgia. And then in 2021, we made it. We won the region and went to the World Series. And then 2022, this year, obviously, we won the region and made it to the World Series again.
Well, and you mentioned your dad, and what I want to know when you mentioned your dad, was that like, is this how you guys bonded?
Yeah. So he was a coach even before I was born. And then he coached me growing up, and then after I was done playing, we coached together. So it was kind of our thing, to this day, it's still some of my best memories and something that I hold very, very dearly. And that's the reason I coach, is basically as a tribute to my dad's legacy and to carry that on.
So you mentioned your dad, and I know that, look, I know that you've talked about your dad in the past. It's been on the broadcast and all that about how much your father inspired you. But what exactly would you say would be a favorite memory or something like that that you have of coaching with your dad?
Oh man, you're gonna get me all emotional.
Sorry.
It's quite all right. You know, I get emotional talking about my dad. Everybody knows it. I did it on national TV last week when Julie Foudy asked me about it. So it's something that I have to answer a lot about my dad, and I'm really happy to do that because I want people to remember him for the amazing coach that he was. So, but you know, some of my best memories with him were, I'll tell you a funny story. I don't know if it's funny, but an amazing story is in 2012. Dad and I were coaching together, and the tournament we were in Dixon, and the tournament got rained out. So Dad and I didn't have anything to do, and so we decided we were going to leave in our coaching outfits, and we went skydiving together and jumped out of a plane that same day simply because there was a rain out on the baseball field, and we still wanted to do something cool, so we went skydiving together. So we had a great bond, man. We did a lot of cool things together, and most of it was all centered around Little League baseball.
Well, and I think that is so awesome because, you know, I have a 3-year-old, and I talk about him all the time, but I have a 3-year-old, and he's getting to that point where he wants to do everything with Dad. He wants, you know, if I'm taking the trash out, he wants to take the trash out. If I'm doing X, he's wanting to do that as well. No matter what it is, it is. But then there are also some kids that decide I want to do the direct opposite of that. And whatever my dad's doing, I don't care about it. I want to do something else because my dad wants me to do what I want to do. But what did your dad do whenever you were little that helped you gain this passion that you do have for baseball?
Yeah, so when I was a kid, my dad was the president of the league of St. Bethlehem Little League in Clarksville, Tennessee, which is the 4th largest little league in the United States, actually. They have 1,200 kids, and my dad was one of the people who helped build that league. And so he was the president of that league even when I wasn't really playing, when I was really young. And so I spent pretty much every single evening and every weekend I spent all day at the baseball field. So it was something that I just loved from a very, very early age, just being around it. And I thought all the kids that played that were older than me, I thought they were the coolest people in the world. And then, you know, obviously I got to play, and now I look back and I see these small kids looking at our kids thinking they're the coolest kids in the world, and I just think, man, that was me one day, and now we're getting to give that same kind of opportunity to the kids to be role models to the younger generation, which is what they were for me.
Well, no, and that's actually what happened with my son because, you know, I know a lot of your games were during the week, but the ones that were on the weekend, we sat and we watched them together, and he was like, Dad, those kids are just a little bit older than I am. Like, they're not much. I was like, yeah, buddy, you're 3, they're 11, they're 12. They're only 7 or 8 years older than you. But there's a part of this is for you as a coach that not a lot of people make that decision. Some people make decisions to go off and do a career. Like I did. I decided I wanted to talk for a living instead of actually do something productive. But for you, you know, when did you know that you wanted to become a coach when you were done playing?
Man, coaching little kids has always been something that I wanted to do. You know, never once did I think that I was the best or you know, better than other coaches or a coach that would make it to the World Series 2 times. That wasn't at all why I did it. Or I still, you know, I just feel very lucky. But I just wanted to teach younger kids that baseball is a great game, and the relationship that I had with my father, I want to show other kids that they can have a great relationship with their fathers through baseball. So really, I just wanted to share the game with people.
Well, no, and that's the part I love is the fact that is why you do it, because with the Little League and with Little League in general, that is such a cool thing to connect fathers and sons. I'm coaching. I put quotes around the coaching because basically all my job is for my son when he's playing instructional leagues is just to keep him on the field. But it's a bond that we share. And I know that you had that bond for your dad, but man, I got to ask, like, what was it like for you last year to fulfill that promise that you made with your dad before he passed?
Oh, I'm assuming that you're talking about, so right before my dad passed away, he said he wanted his ashes, you know, to be spread at Williamsport at the Little League World Series.
Yep.
And I thought that I knew I would do it. I didn't know I would do it as a coach or on the field. I figured I would go there as a fan one day, and I would just while somebody wasn't looking, I would put some ashes in the corner of the field or something. But it turns out that last year during our big run, I spread his ashes at each level along the way. So at the state tournament, I called timeout after the very first pitch and went out there and put him on the mound. And then at the regional tournament, after the very first pitch, I called timeout and walked out. And on ESPN, I put him on the mound. I didn't tell anyone, but ESPN had that footage, and they ended up using that in the story later on in the World Series. And then when I got to the World Series, of course I had to do it. So I called timeout after the very first pitch that we threw, walked out. The umpires and the other coach thought that they didn't know what I was doing, so they thought that I saw something wrong with our pitcher or something like that. But our team gathered around the mound, and I got to scatter his ashes right there on national TV and fulfill that promise to my dad, and which was an amazing, really a truly amazing experience for my entire family. And then I did it again this year when we went to the World Series after the first pitch. I called timeout and went out there, and I just wanted, all the players came running in from outfield and infield, and they all gathered around me, and I just wanted them to know that, if my dad were here right now, he would just want all of those kids to know just that he loved them.
Well, I didn't know you did that again this year, because during the first game was happening as we were all getting ready for the show for 3HL. So we had the game on, we had it muted, and there was a shot, and we all remembered it because Brent and I were talking about it. But it was you coming off the mound, and the camera was on you, and you could see that you were getting choked up, but we didn't know that you did it again.
Yeah, I did it. And Julie Fowley was actually talking about it when it happened, because she knew it was going to happen this year as opposed to last year. And the reason I didn't tell anyone last year is, one, I didn't want to make a huge deal about it, but two, I thought ESPN or Little League might tell me no.
Right.
And I figured that I would ask for forgiveness later than them tell me no on the front end. And then they loved it so much that when I got there this year, they asked me if I was going to do it. And I was like, of course I'm going to do it. Why would I not? So I did it again. And, it's pretty cool to walk off that mound and people that I don't even know that we don't know they did know what was going on because they had seen the story. And they all stood up and applauded me as I walked off, and it was pretty emotional.
Right now, we're joined by the head coach for the Nolensville Little League team. Just got back from Williamsport, Pennsylvania. Came in 4th place in the world in the tournament. Made it to the championship for the United States. And Randy Huth joins us right now. Matter of fact, they just finished their celebration, their welcome home celebration, just a little while ago in Nolensville. And it's so amazing because we're still seeing highlights of everything that takes place. But like for you, what's it like seeing the replays or seeing the going back and watching the game yourself or anything like that, and knowing that you did that in the first game, not only last year, but this year?
Well, it's pretty cool knowing that, you think, I don't know where people go when they pass away or what happens to their spirit or their soul. I don't know. But knowing that my dad is part of that field forever, and me being able to go there as a coach makes me feel really, I guess that's the one place I feel the closest to him now. So it's kind of a cool thing. And knowing that wherever he is in spirit, his body is there, having a front row seat to a pretty cool experience.
Man, that is so awesome. It seriously is, bro. It is so awesome that you have that connection with your dad, because I seriously hope in some form, some fashion, some life that I have that connection with my son, and that my son feels the way about me the same way that you feel about your dad, because it means that we did something right. And that's where all of this comes. And that comes with him being proud of you. And I talk to my son and tell him how proud I am of them, but also as a coach, like for you look at your team and you did everything that you did, but for you, like, what is the proudest moment for you? What was the thing that you are proudest of when it comes to this team?
I mean, this year was definitely I'm more proud that we were able to win the Sportsmanship Award. That's an award that is given out to one Little League team, and it's voted on by the coaches, the media, the Little League International staff, the stadium staff, and the team hosts. So that's voted on by your peers and people that you interact with the entire couple weeks that you're there as a team. And we were able to win that sportsmanship award, and that means more to me than winning anything else.
You mentioned the hosts. Like, what goes into being a host at the Little League World Series?
Yeah, so we left on August 2nd, and we didn't return until 2 days ago. So I don't even know what my days are all run together. I don't even know what day or what anymore. I just know we were gone for like 3 weeks, I think. So, we were in Warner Robins, and then we got to come home for about 15 hours in between the region and the World Series, just long enough to basically do your laundry and kind of pack again. And then we took a 13-hour bus ride to Williamsport. And 13-hour bus ride with 13, 12-year-old boys is an interesting ride, to say the least.
Whoa, hold up. You're going to the Little League World Series, and they're not even letting you fly a plane?
Oh, no. They do fly the teams from out west. They fly those teams in. But the teams that are from the east side of the United States, they bus them in. So it's a 13-hour bus ride it's like 12 and a half hours from Nolensville, I think. And so that's an interesting bus ride when you got 13, 12-year-olds. And then you get there and you live in Williamsport. You live on the complex. It's called the Grove, and it's basically like college dormitories. And in each dorm is 4 different teams. In our dorm was the team from Curacao, which they speak Dutch, the team from Mexico, which speaks Spanish, the team from Iowa, who obviously speaks English, and then us. So our boys every single day had to communicate with kids that don't speak the same language, and it was amazing to watch and so much fun. See them communicate through baseball, and even though they might not speak the language and all they do is grunt and groan and high five and fist bump, you could still see the smiles on their faces. And each team, when you get there, has what's called a team host, and they call them uncles. So it's these guys that have been doing it for. Our uncles have, one of them been doing it for 8 years, one of them been doing it for 23 years. They're volunteers, and they're basically like concierge. Anything you need, you tell them, they'll go get it. If you need something from the grocery store, if you need your practice time scheduled, if you need time at the gift shop, they'll schedule you to go do all that stuff. So it's a huge help to have those guys. Our Uncle Marlon and Uncle Chuck, and I wish that they could hear this, because those guys are amazing, and without them, our experience is totally different. They help you every which way, even getting to lunch on time, getting to your media obligations on time, getting your uniforms and your photos and videos, all the obligations that you have coming at you from every which angle. There's not any free time. Even though you're there 24 hours a day, it is constantly one thing to the next thing to the next thing to the next thing, and those guys kept us on task, and they are absolutely amazing.
Wait, okay, so I'm sorry, I got to go back to this 13-hour bus ride, because when I was in college, we took a 13-hour bus ride to Arkansas State to play a baseball game. We're in the middle of nowhere. It's 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. We're watching, I think, Saw, because that's how long ago this was. The first Saw movie came out. And you've got a bunch of college guys, 19, 20, 21 years old, and we're bored out of our minds. How on earth did you keep 11 and 12-year-old kids occupied for 12 to 13 hours on a bus?
I think the better question there is probably how you keep us from going insane with those kids. But, they're 12. They're 12-year-old boys. They're having a good time. Their first time they've ever been away from their parents for this long, for the most of them. Maybe 1 or 2 of them had gone to church camp or something for a week. But they've never been away from their parents this long, and some of them know how to react and some of them don't. And they're having a good time. They're emotional. They're hard to please. Everybody wants something different to eat. Some of them are picky. Some of them aren't. And they're losing everything imaginable that belongs to them. They never can find anything. So at some point we have to play both coach. At some point we have to play friend. At some point we have to play mom. At some point we have to play dad. So it is a very interesting dynamic between us and the players, and keeping those kids focused, I would say, is pretty much impossible. We just do the best we can to try to keep them occupied.
Look, that's not going to change, okay? That is never going to change, because I have a nephew that 4 years ago was playing in the state championship. It was the final game of the state championship, and he didn't even know where his belt was. So that's never going to change. They're always going to be forgetting something. I can almost guarantee you that probably like 75% of an equipment manager's job in the SEC is to make sure that the SEC players have belts whenever they're in Hoover playing in the SEC championship. But like, what about food, man? I mean, you mentioned just a little while ago, you guys were home for maybe 15 hours over the course of 3 weeks. Like, what do you do for food?
Yeah, when you're on campus, the cool thing about that is the Little League International is right next to the Pennsylvania School of Technology, which has a chef-type degree, a culinary degree. So all of our meals are catered in the cafeteria. So you have breakfast, lunch, and dinner every single day catered. And they bring a bunch of different options. And if for some reason a kid doesn't like what they're having that day, there's peanut butter and jelly every single day that you can have peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. So the food is absolutely amazing. They do a wonderful job. It's a bunch of future chefs that are learning their craft, and they make some great food. I mean, we had everything from homemade cheesecakes to French toast every morning to chicken and waffles to, enchiladas, tacos, spaghetti, hamburgers, hot dogs, all kind of stuff like that. It was really, really awesome. So feeding the boys is actually easy once you get there. The biggest thing is snacks in between meals because they're 12-year-old boys and they're hungry 30 minutes after they eat. So you got to have tons and tons of snacks, and that's where the hosts, your uncles, come in. They took on 2 different occasions. They had to drive me to Wegmans, which I'd never heard of Wegmans, by the way. Anybody that is from the Northeast that has a Wegmans grocery store, that's the coolest grocery store ever. But oh my gosh, I didn't know what Wegmans was, but I know anybody listening right now that does know what Wegmans, they will agree with me. It's like if Publix meets Whole Foods meets a nice restaurant. All in the same place. It's awesome. And so I got to go to Wegmans and buy $500 worth of snacks multiple times.
Wow. Okay, so I have to ask, because how many PlayStations actually made the trip?
We didn't have any PlayStations with us.
What?
Yeah. Nobody had. We had no gaming system set up in our dorm. Now you can bring them, and last year we did have it, but this year we didn't. And which I think was better. Not having that is better. Now in the Grove, they have a game room that has video games, arcade games, ping pong, wiffle ball, just frisbees, all kinds of games, cornhole. There's plenty of games and a pool, plenty of games to play.
Well, no, and that's why I asked, because that's how we bonded. Again, you play travel ball. We all do travel ball. You're sitting in a hotel. You're doing all this stuff, and you're bonding over video games. Like what we would do is every single team would be on a floor, or you'd have 2 or 3 teams on the same floor, and you would just keep your hotel door open, and somebody from the other team would just roll in, and you would get a game. For us, it was like, I think it was WWF No Mercy. That was what we were doing because it was N64. But, that's what we played. So that's how we bonded. So when you said, hey, they're bonding with all these kids from these different countries, the first thing that I thought of was, oh, okay, well, they're sitting there playing Madden, they're playing FIFA, they're playing something, and that's how they're bonding.
Yep, no, we didn't have that. We did have in the arcade, yes, you did play games with the international teams. But remember, this isn't a hotel. This is dormitories, so this is a lot different than a hotel. There aren't any of the frills that a hotel would have. This is like old school college dormitory. There's just blank walls and bunks, and that's pretty much it.
Well, no, go ahead.
And we took all the electronics away from the boys every single night, so they couldn't stay up all night on their phones. They couldn't play games on their phones. We took all that away from them. So every single night we made sure that they got in bed and got a good sleep.
Wow. Okay. First off, smart by you, because they would not have went to sleep, because I know that I wouldn't have went to sleep. So that is a great move by you, but that's part of the technology. Whenever I was playing, no, I actually can say we didn't have cell phones when I was playing. We barely did towards the very end. When I was starting to get into college, I got cell phones then, but we didn't have all the technology that kids have now. Heck, we didn't even have all the technology when it came to getting scouting reports and going and looking at other teams and things like that. That's why you're in a different situation now, because every single game that not only you played, but all of the other teams played were all televised. So for you going into this, how did you guys come up with some sort of game plan or anything like that for each game?
Well, it's pretty cool in this day and age. They have, because all of the region games are broadcast on ESPN Plus. So you have every game that each team that's there has played through their region, and the games that they've played at the World Series. You have access to all of that. So we're constantly watching video to see who we think might pitch against us, so that we can come up with a game plan of how we're going to attack that. Even as far as if we're going to face a lefty, then we need to make sure that I'm pitching and batting practice in the cages. Or if we have righties, then Coach Evan and Coach Mark are pitching. So we did a lot of scouting. So we knew exactly what each team had from what we saw. There were some surprises, but
right.
You knew who their best hitters were. You knew who their best pitchers were. You know who their best arms were, and what they were going to throw at you. And you can come up with a game plan of how you're going to attack that with a good matchup.
So basically what you're saying is the kid that you guys faced that was throwing 77 miles per hour, you knew he was coming, and you knew exactly what was going to happen when he got on the mound.
Absolutely. We faced multiple of those. We faced 3 of those throughout the tournament. So we were ready for it, especially that kid from, Hawaii obviously is its own little beast, but
right.
The kid from the Great Lakes from Indiana, who was one of the hardest throwers in the tournament, and we faced him, and we knew pretty much everything that he was going to bring to us. And we had a game plan for him, which was stay patient and get a lot of pitches to get him out of the game because of the pitch counts. We knew that if we got him to 85 pitches, that they would have to bring in somebody that we could definitely handle a little better than somebody throwing 77 miles an hour from 46 feet.
No, and that's exactly what happened, because we were watching it because the game was going on during the show, 3HL, and we're watching it, and this kid's bringing it 74, 75, 77, and ESPN's putting up the little meter that shows the equivalent of this is 94. The equivalent of 77 is 99 miles per hour. So you kind of got a gauge of what you guys were facing, and then literally it all changed at that very second, the very moment that he came out of the game, because he got to his pitch count. That's when you guys went to work. We're joined right now by Randy Huth, the head coach for Nolensville, the Little League team that just got back from Williamsport, Pennsylvania, from playing in the Little League World Series, came in 4th, came in 2nd in the United States. And the one thing that bothers me, and I don't think it's really bothering me, but I just got to know, man, why on earth were you guys not allowed to wear the Vanderbilt uniforms? Because those things are legit, bro.
Yeah, so the Vandy uniforms, the pinstripes, the black with the gold pinstripes, that's something that teams or fans either love or they absolutely despise. So we get the love and the hate on those jerseys, but the boys love them, and I think they look kind of mean. But when you get to the next level, Williamsport, obviously you're not representing Nolensville anymore. Now you're representing the entire Southeast. That's why you got to change into the Southeast uniforms. Now we're fortunate in that our colors are not that much different. We're black and gold for our normal uniforms, and then we're black and yellow for the World Series. So ours are actually pretty close, so fans can still wear the same swag that they wore when they're cheering us on when we're black and gold, whereas some teams are total opposites, not even close to what they're wearing, because you don't get to choose.
Well, no, and I thought you did, because I saw the colors that you were wearing. I was like, oh, well, that's awesome. They at least get to wear their colors, so I thought that you got to pick. So I didn't know that was just by chance that you were those are the colors that you got to wear during the tournament, which is extremely awesome that you did, because look, man, I mean, our uniforms were everything to us. Like when we got our new uniforms, because we were the Marlins, like, yes, the Florida Marlins, that was the team that we had. So we had all Marlins gear. Like, we had brand new Marlins hats. We had their batting practice jerseys. We had their on-field jerseys. We had their entire uniforms. Like, that was our livelihood. So if we'd have gotten a point to wear different uniforms, I think that would have been a little bit different. But, man, now I got to ask, because you mentioned it again, and I just keep going back to the fact that you've been gone for 3 weeks. Like, you left. Like, I know you had to have, like, a job or anything like this, but, like, are you, like, a volunteer? Are you getting paid to coach these kids? Like, how does this work?
Yeah, I'm strictly volunteer. I don't get paid.
Wow.
So I'm 100% a volunteer, and so I got to miss work. I got to do all that stuff. And even if, going all the way back to March when you start, you're putting in thousands and thousands of hours into this, and it's truly got to be a passion. If it's not a passion project for you, then the commitment level is too much for anybody. So all those guys that you see coaching at all these different teams, not just in the World Series, but in the region and in the regular season, that kind of stuff, that's all volunteers in Little League. And that's what's beautiful about it is you're not there unless you love it. And it is a huge commitment, and it takes a toll on your family too, being away from your family for that long. All of us have families, so you're away from your work, you're away from your family, but you're doing what you love. And I wouldn't trade any of it. I wouldn't trade 1 minute of it.
Well, and I have to ask because we saw it. We saw it happen. We saw you guys, I don't think there's a better way to put it, but we saw you guys get destroyed. I mean, you got beat down by Hawaii in that very first game. Like, it was something that shocked everybody. It was like if you're watching The Replacements and you heard Keanu Reeves say it was the equivalent of quicksand. Like, the first inning happened and just something after another that just kept going wrong for you guys. And it broke my heart to see it because of the fact that the story and you guys coming from here and everything else, seeing how you guys and what happened in that game. And it felt like it was just over. Like, it was like, hey, first pitch, all right, ball game's over 4 innings later. But I'm curious about the second game because not everybody goes into a playoff game or a tournament game and gets a second opportunity to face a team that did that to them. Before that game, before the United States Championship game, what did you tell the team about going up against Hawaii for a second time?
I just wanted to be real clear to them that it's baseball and anything can happen. And that team may beat us 99 out of 100 times, but there might be one time that we beat them. And my big thing to the boys was, the comeback is usually better than the setback. So although we've had a setback, it would be pretty awesome and a great storybook tell if we could make a huge comeback and beat those guys. And although we weren't able to do that, we definitely gave them a game. And that's all I wanted. We lost them 13-0 in 3.5 innings the first time. The second time, it was 5-1. And if one play goes a little bit different, we don't get doubled up right there in the 5th inning on a line drive, nothing we could do about it, just tough luck, then that game is a lot closer. And we could have been one swing away from tying that game. So I was really proud of the boys, the way they came back. So the big lesson for them is don't worry about the setback. Let's worry about the comeback, and let's work towards that.
And man, that is awesome. And I hate that you guys lost, but I remember and I know what happened for me personally. Losing the game to Hawaii would have destroyed me, but it would have been more about that last game. No matter what was going to happen, you knew that last game, that runner-up game, that game that you were either going to finish third or finish fourth was coming. What was it like to have to go in front of your players and talk to them after that game? What did you tell them?
It's always a difficult conversation. Only one team can be the winner at the very end. So that there's a really good chance that conversation is going to come up. And it's obviously an emotional one because you spent so much time together leading up to that point. And you know that the boys are going to be disappointed. So when I spoke to the kids, I don't know if you saw that whole thing. I have not seen it back, so I don't know exactly what I said. But I do know that I just wanted to let them know that we're not going to hold our heads down about this. We're going to celebrate this because what you did is something that no one's ever done from our league. Very few people have ever done in this lifetime. And you guys should totally be proud of yourselves. And I just want them to know that, hey, I'm going to love you. I'm going to love you forever. You guys are part of my family now. So we're going to celebrate all of this instead of being sad. But I also want them to know that it's okay to be mad or sad because that means that you care. And that's okay. Don't put a fake smile on just because someone told you to. So it's okay to be sad. It's okay to be emotional. It's okay to be 12 years old. But at the end of the day, raise your head up and be proud of your accomplishment.
Dude, I love that. I seriously do, because that is something that I don't think that a lot of kids understand, because they're told all this time and every single day to toughen up and to be strong and to don't show the emotions and things like that. But they're still 11 and 12-year-old kids. Like, I still remember my very last game that I thought that I would ever play of rec ball. And that goes back to what we were talking about at the very beginning of, me watching the Little League World Series, us playing in our own version of that, not winning, getting eliminated, and sitting there and thinking that, what was I going to do from here? What was going to happen? And at the time I hated it, but now I actually kind of appreciate. I remember my mom taking a picture, and I'm sitting on the bleachers, and I'm bawling my eyes out because we just lost. And I love the fact that you're telling these kids that it's okay for that to happen. And we're joined by Randy Huth, the head coach for the Nolensville Little League team. And the other thing that I think of when I think of my travel ball team, because I almost see those guys as more brothers than what I actually did for college or even high school or things like that. But I look back at some of my teammates in that, and I can literally name them off the top of my head, that I think about the team and the things that we went through together, whether it was as kids, 11, 12 years old, as teenagers when we were turning 15 and 16 and 17 years old, when we were adults and 20 and 21 years old, and all the things that we went through and all the decisions that we made. And I'm curious, can you sit back and I know that you've been coaching for over 20 years. You said your dad coached for over 40 years. Was there ever, or is there a player that you can think of that you were just like, man, I am so glad that we helped that kid make the right decisions instead of the decisions that he actually could have made?
Absolutely. There's a bunch of those stories, some good, some bad. We've had some heartbreak over some kids that just devastated us, and we wish we would have done more. One of those particular stories was a kid. His name was Wanye Boone, and he unfortunately took a wrong turn and went down a bad path, and he ended up disappearing. He's never been found. So we don't even know what happened to him, but I know that he got involved with some bad stuff, and he took a wrong turn, and I've regretted that. And that was a team from 2012, and I've always regretted that I wasn't able to change that kid's life for the better. So, but there's a ton of good stories where we definitely made an impact on kids' lives for the better. And I try to stay in contact with as many of those players as I can. But it's a beautiful thing when you get a wedding invitation from a kid you coached 10 or 15 years ago, or a graduation invitation, or an invitation to come see where they signed to play Division I college baseball. Those are really cool things, and that happens every single year. We get those invitations from kids going all the way back 20 years. And during this run in the World Series, we got a lot of feedback from kids that I coached all the way back in 2002 and 2003, kids that were like, I remember when you came to the mound and made me take a deep breath, and I was so mad at you, Coach, and now I look back and I'm glad that you did that, because now in my everyday life, sometimes I got to stop and slow my heart rate and just relax. Yep. So that's a cool thing. So we've had some tragedies along the way from some kids, but man, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of good stories.
And it's funny because I have the exact same one about my coach. In fact, when my wife and I obviously at the time she was my fiance, we were planning our wedding. She asked me, like, who are the important people that have to be there? Like, if you had your A-list of if nobody else showed up, who would it be? And, I said my immediate family and all of that. But the one person that I said my travel ball coach, because he meant more to me than a lot of people did. And then that was what was so wild about it, because I didn't even invite my high school coach. I didn't invite my college coach, but I did invite my travel ball coach, because he was the one that taught me all these life lessons. And so it meant more for him to be there when I got married than it did for any one of my other coaches. And I think that's the cool part about something like this, is that you are making those connections. And that's what happens to me. Like, I still value his opinion more than I value anybody else's. Like, heck, half the nicknames or things or whatever that's happened in my life, I get from him. In the very last game that he ever coached me in, he pulled me from the game because I struck out and I threw my bat. And it was in a super regional that we were playing in to go to a World Series, and I did something dumb and he pulled me from the game, and that was the very last game that he ever coached me in. But yet I wanted him at at my wedding because he meant that much to me, and those are the connections I'm making. So, I say with all of that at the same time, this season ends now and these kids grow up, and yes, there's some kids that are going to be able to come back if you guys make it, and so you can put together the team. But like, what happens now between now and March when you get ready for the next season? Like, what are you doing?
Man, as of right now, I just wish that we were still playing because it's still so fresh.
Yeah.
But, as time goes on in the next month or two, I'll start to reflect and remember all the cool experiences we have. Right now, it's just overwhelming. So much fun, so many events, so many things have happened. So many people have reached out to us, including, celebrities, Major League Baseball players, professional athletes, even kids that are sick and in bed have reached out and talked to us about how much of an inspiration we were to them. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they're the inspiration, not us. But there's just so much emotion right now, with overwhelming. So it's going to take a little while for it all to sink in, but eventually, once it all sinks in, we'll stop and get ready for next year. Start to do it all over again. Who knows? Maybe we'll be fortunate enough to make it back to the Little League World Series. My understanding is what I was told by Little League this time was that there's been a bunch of coaches that have made it 2 times in a row, but there's never been a U.S. coach that's made it 3 times in a row. So you never know. Oh. Maybe I could be the first.
Oh, and no. Now, see, now we can't end on that because I was about to wrap up until you said that. But I need to know, what did you think? What was the first thing that came to your mind when you heard that stat?
I better get back. I got to be that guy.
Well, no, and that's it, because that's exactly what I would have said. The very moment somebody told me that, I'm be like, all right, cool. Well, I'm going to be the next one then, because that's the challenge. That's why we played. That's the reason why we coach. That's the reason why we want to do everything that we do, is because of that. So, like, that's exactly, I would have said the same thing.
Yeah, I want to be the first, and the chances of doing that are so slim and so hard. And, it's virtually impossible, but why not me? Why not?
No, and that's exactly right. Look, Randy, I know that you got to go. I know that you've been on here with us for a little while, and I know that you guys have your celebration going on and everything, and so I appreciate you stopping by and hopping on with us on the Strike Zone tonight and talking about this, because I know that you've gotten to do a lot of interviews and you've talked and you came on 3HL with us, but man, it was one of these things where it's like that deep dive, and quite frankly, I could ask you 500 more questions, not just about Little League, but coaching styles and all this other stuff. But look, the moment the show ends, what I'm going to do is we're going to put the link up. We're going to put this on the podcast, and so that you can send it back to your uncles back in Williamsport, because I think it's so awesome about how fantastic that you were and the things that you've said about them. And I really do want them to hear this, because I don't know if they understand what they mean to you guys in this situation and being in a place where you're going to be playing in Williamsport and they're the ones hosting you.
Man, I hope those guys know just how much they mean to us.
No, and they absolutely will, and I appreciate it. Randy Huth, head coach of Nolensville, joining us on the Strike Zone. If you happen to miss any of that, hop in and you can go to the podcast. We're going to put it up here in just a few moments because we're about to be done for the night. But if you missed any of that, go to our podcast section, wherever you get your podcasts. It'll be up here just a few minutes so that you can hear from it. In fact, we got some comments that are coming in right now that said, I watched a lot of the Little League World Series, and the umpires behind the plate were terrible and calling balls and strikes. I do agree. I did see some that were very questionable, and it wasn't just for Nolensville. It was for some of the other teams as well. But look, again, these are our Little League umpires. Like, you're not going to have Quest Tech out there, and you're not going to have machine umps and robot umps and everything else like that. Which reminds me, have we gotten robot umps yet in the International League? Because I thought that was supposed to come by the end of the season, and we only have about 3 weeks left. So I'm just curious if those things are ever going to show up, because I know that they weren't in the Little League World Series. there were some questionable calls, but at the same time, and I know Randy hopped off, but at the same thing, like he knows, we all know, like you can't blame it on anything else. Like you can't say that it was because of bad calls or anything like that. The fact that Nolensville out of Tennessee got to the Little League World Series, placed fourth, made it to the United States Championship game is a tremendous story. And that goes back to what we talk about all the time with the strike zone, is the fact that you have a group and a bunch of players and a bunch of kids and a bunch of teenagers around Middle Tennessee and quite frankly throughout the entire state of Tennessee that are so good at the game of baseball. And I know that we're a football state, and I know that we're a basketball state, and I know that baseball is third. But at the same time, you have a lot of talented kids here, a lot of talented players. And look, there's a reason why these coaches have made it 3 and 4 times, and why Randy Huth was going on his second consecutive time, and Goodlettsville has done what they've done. It's because of the talent that is in this area. And I think that that's the one thing that we always want to shine a light on the most here on the Strike Zone is the talent here locally. Because, yes, we can get people on that can talk about what was happening here at Sulphur Dale before First Horizon was even thought of, before people that were even born that were going to build First Horizon were even thought of. And they can talk about the Giants, and they can talk about the Stars, and they can talk about the Cubs and the Vols and all these other teams and everything else that happened here and all these different things. But there are still kids here in Middle Tennessee that have this talent. And Randy is right. The fact that you had, for the second consecutive season, a team from Nashville make it to the Little League World Series, and this is not hard. You got to win one tournament here locally, and then you've got to turn around and you've got to win the state tournament, and then after the state tournament, you got to make it to the regional tournament, and then after that tournament, that's when you finally even make it to Williamsport, and that's just making it there. It is a long road. It is a tough road, and the kids that participate in this, yes, they're gone for 20 days and 30 days out of the season are out of this. And here's what's crazy. And we didn't talk about it a lot with Randy. These kids missed the start of school. Some of these kids were going to new schools already. And their friends went, and they were already making new friends for 15, 16, 20 days while these kids were in Georgia, while they were in Pennsylvania, while they were doing all this. And yes, they were doing this thing that's going to be a life experience that they're never going to forget. But at the exact same time, the moment they got home, there was a reason why their event tonight had to start at 6, is because the kids had to get done with school. They rode the bus, they got home, they did all this other stuff. And their friends were already making friends with other friends, and they come back and it's done. Like, you feel out of place. It happened to me numerous times. And yes, I'm talking about 11, 12, 13 years old, where you just experience something amazing. You go off and you do this and you play in this tournament, and there's newspaper articles, and there's television hits, and there's all this stuff, and there's updates and interviews and all this other stuff that you're doing. But at the exact same time, you then come back and you walk into your school and everything has kind of went on without you. While you were focused on baseball, your kids were, your friends were making other friends, and school was getting started, and your teachers were already giving out assignments and all this. Like, that's part of this that we can't forget. And it's awesome that this experience took place, but these kids were coming back home, and they're going to 6th and 7th grade and all these other things. And now they've got to go in, and they're like, yes, so I've been gone for 20 days. Like, how much homework did I miss? What did I do? Like, what all was happening? And you get people that are jealous of them because they did this, because they had the ability to do this, and the kids that are jealous didn't have it. Those are the things that these kids are going to go through. So I do think it's awesome, man. And I do think that these kids, whenever they come back, I'm glad that they had this celebration tonight because they deserved it. But if you missed any of this interview that we just did with Randy Huth, make sure that you go to our podcast section, hop in on that, listen to the entire thing. In fact, Monday, you're going to be able to hear this again. If you did miss anything for the Labor Day holiday, it'll be on the 104.5, the Zone main frequency. You'll be able to hear our interview that we just did with Randy Huth. So I appreciate everybody that hopped in and was involved in that. Get down to the ballpark this weekend, man. There's no football. I mean, there's college football, but you do have Paradise in the Park. Let me turn around. Yep, Bandbox is still packed. It's going to be packed every single night. And when Paradise in the Park takes place, it's going to be even more packed. Make sure that you get down here. Redbirds up right now. Okay, the Redbirds are up by like 6-0, okay? We still got 3 or 4 weeks left in the regular season. The Sounds still have 2.5 home games remaining. Honestly, now you can just say 2. Because when they finish this game up tonight, they'll have 4 games remaining here. They'll go on the road. They'll come back for another 6-game homestand. They'll go on the road one more time. And then they're back for 3 games against these Memphis Redbirds. And then the season's over. The regular season's over. And if they win the division, then they're going to head to Vegas. There are no playoffs here at First Horizon Park. The next 2.5 homestands are it until next spring. So make sure that you get down to First Horizon Park. I appreciate everybody that hopped in tonight. Thank you so much. Go listen to the podcast. Congratulations to Nolensville for the fantastic year. We will talk to you next Thursday here on the Strike Zone from First Horizon Park. Have yourself a great night.